I inherited my grandfather's house, and uncovered the truth about my family that broke me. Growing up, my grandfather's house felt like a sacred place. Tucked away on the edge of a quiet coastal town, it was a stone cottage with a sprawling backyard, a dusty library full of old books, and the smell of pipe smoke always lingering in the walls. My sister and I would spend summers there as kids, running barefoot through the grass and listening to Grandpa's wild stories about pirates, lost gold, and family legends. But everything changed when I turned 11. That summer, we didn't go. My parents told us Grandpa was sick and needed rest. Then a few months later, he died. No funeral. No goodbye. Just a letter my mom read aloud, saying he had passed peacefully in his sleep. She cried. My dad looked stoic. My sister, Ivy, only 9 at the time, was confused. I tried to ask questions, but every time I brought him up, my parents shut me down. Mom would say, some things are better left in the past. I didn't push. But something always felt off. Years passed. I went to college. Ivy drifted away from the family. We texted sometimes, but she never came home for holidays. My relationship with our parents was polite but cold. There was always a quiet tension, like something unsaid between us. Then, 3 months ago, I got a call from a lawyer. My grandfather had left me his house. Not my parents. Not Ivy. Just me. Apparently, the house had been sitting untouched for over 14 years. My parents never told me it was still in our family. The lawyer said the will had been misplaced and recently surfaced in probate. I was stunned. And suspicious. So I took time off work, packed a bag, and drove to the house. It was like walking into a sealed memory. Dust coated everything. The furniture was exactly where I remembered it. A framed picture of me and Ivy on the mantel. His old hat on the coat rack. But something was different. The air felt heavy. Like the house itself was holding its breath. The first 2 days, I just cleaned. I stayed in the guest bedroom, opened windows, aired out the place. On the 3rd day, I started exploring. In the study, behind a shelf of war novels, I found a locked drawer. Inside was a manila folder labeled, for Elijah. When he's ready. I'm Elijah. My hands were shaking. Inside the folder was a handwritten letter from Grandpa, a few old photos, and several legal documents. The letter began. If you're reading this, then they never told you the truth. I'm sorry. I tried to fight for you. But your parents made sure I couldn't. There's so much I wanted to say to you, but I was cut off. I hope you'll understand what really happened. Then it got darker. Grandpa accused my parents of keeping me and Ivy away from him intentionally, after a falling out over money, yes, but also because he discovered something terrible. According to the letter, my father, his own son, had stolen thousands from Grandpa's business accounts and tried to cover it up. When confronted, my dad cut all contact. Mom backed him up, and they told us Grandpa had become unstable. They kept us away, fabricated his illness, and eventually told us he'd died. But he hadn't. At least not for another 3 years. He'd written letters. Sent gifts. Tried to call. All intercepted. He said he even hired a private investigator to prove his son had embezzled funds, but the case was buried. My father paid someone off. Included in the folder was proof, bank statements, signed affidavits, even a copy of the PI report. It was undeniable. But that wasn't the worst part. In the final pages, Grandpa explained that Ivy wasn't my full sister. She was my cousin. His words were careful, but the meaning was clear. Ivy's biological mother was my dad's sister, my Aunt Erica, who'd been institutionalized after a breakdown. Grandpa said she got pregnant at 18 under uncertain circumstances, and my parents had agreed to adopt the baby to avoid scandal. Ivy never knew. And neither did I. I felt like my entire childhood cracked apart in that moment. I tried calling Ivy. No answer. I called again. Nothing. Finally, I drove to her apartment in Chicago. She let me in, bleary-eyed and confused. When I told her everything, she laughed. Laughed, like I was crazy. Then she pulled out a shoebox from her closet. Inside, letters from Grandpa. Birthday cards. Photos. He had stayed in touch with her. Secretly. She'd started getting the letters when she turned 18. They stopped when he passed, but she never told me. She said Mom made her promise not to. I was furious. I felt betrayed by everyone, my parents for lying, Ivy for keeping it hidden, and myself for never questioning more. I went home and wrote my parents a long message, confronting them. They didn't reply. 2 weeks later, I received a legal notice. They were contesting the inheritance. That's when I decided to post this, to get it off my chest. I've kept this inside for too long. I'm now staying in the house permanently. I'm restoring it. I've contacted a lawyer of my own. I want to preserve Grandpa's name, fight the contest, and maybe publish his story someday. I don't know if I'll ever forgive my parents. I don't know if I can trust Ivy again. But I know one thing, this house holds truth. And I'm not running from it anymore. The basement was locked for a reason. After I decided to stay at the house, everything changed. It wasn't just the emotional weight of the revelations, it was the physical presence of the house itself. Being there alone, day after day, I began to feel like I was living inside a secret. The walls whispered. The shadows moved just a little too much. I wasn't sure if it was paranoia, trauma, or something worse, but I couldn't sleep. Every night, I kept hearing a low creaking beneath the floorboards. It was coming from the basement. I hadn't gone down there yet, not once. The door was sealed with an old padlock, and for weeks I'd told myself I wasn't ready. But deep down, I knew I was afraid. Not of dust or cobwebs. Of what I might find. Meanwhile, the legal battle with my parents escalated. Their lawyer sent an aggressive demand to pause the transfer of property, claiming that my grandfather was not of sound mind when he updated his will. The irony was almost laughable. My parents, who had cut him off and declared him dead while he was still alive, now claimed to know what his mental state was like years later. My lawyer, thankfully, was sharp. He countered with documentation Grandpa had included in the folder, notarized, with witnesses. The will was airtight. Still, the court date was set, and I knew I'd likely have to testify. Then Ivy called. She'd been silent for weeks, but now her voice was soft. Apologetic. Elijah. I went back through the letters Grandpa sent me. There's one you need to read. I didn't understand it before, but after what you told me, it makes sense now. She met me at a small cafe halfway between Chicago and the house. Her hands shook as she passed me the letter. It was dated 3 months before his death. Dearest Ivy. I fear time is running short. If you are reading this, it means Elijah has found the truth. Or soon will. But there's more to tell. The house, my house, holds more than memories. I kept something hidden there. Something your father wanted to erase. It's in the basement. I never meant for it to stay hidden this long. I thought I had more time. Tell Elijah not to be afraid. But he must be careful. And he must go alone. I looked at Ivy. You read this and didn't say anything. I thought he meant some old boxes, family stuff. I didn't think he meant, she trailed off. That night, I broke the padlock. The basement stairs groaned under my weight. A thick layer of dust coated every surface. The air was cold, damp, almost too still, like the room had been sealed off from time itself. There was furniture under sheets. Rusty tools. Old trunks. And in the far corner, behind a shelf of paint cans, a false wall. I froze. It wasn't hard to open, a slight push and it cracked away from the frame, revealing a narrow passage lined with stone. At the end of the tunnel, I found a small room. Inside was a metal filing cabinet, a broken chair, and a stack of cassette tapes. Yes, cassette tapes. Labeled by date, spanning almost a decade. I didn't even own a player, but I found an old recorder in the room, battery corroded but intact. I carried everything upstairs. I spent the next 24 hours listening. What I heard destroyed me all over again. The tapes were recordings of Grandpa speaking, sometimes calmly, sometimes shakily, sometimes through tears. He talked about my father. About the money. But also about something else, abuse. My father, apparently, had a long history of cruelty. Not just embezzlement. Not just manipulation. Violence. He'd hurt my Aunt Erica, Ivy's birth mother, when she tried to come forward with the truth. She was silenced. Institutionalized. My grandfather believed my father paid the doctors. There were mentions of shady deals, records going missing, and something that made my stomach turn. He told me if I ever spoke, he'd come for Elijah. Said the boy was too young to remember anything. Said I'd lose him, just like I lost Erica. So I stayed quiet. God help me, I stayed quiet. I sat there in the dark, staring at the walls of my childhood, realizing I'd been raised by a man capable of unthinkable things. And a mother who enabled him. The worst part? I started having flashes of memory. Small things. Locked doors. Raised voices. Bruises I couldn't explain. A fall down the stairs that was just an accident. I called Ivy. I needed her to hear the tapes. She came the next day, and when I played one particular section, where Grandpa described how Ivy came to live with us, she started to cry. Erica begged me to take Ivy myself. But they threatened me with court, said I'd never see her again. They forged papers. Said she was abandoned. But she wasn't. Erica wanted her. Ivy fell apart. We both did. We've since filed for an injunction to stop the will contest. The new evidence, the tapes, the documents, even an old letter from Erica that we found in one of Grandpa's locked drawers, is damning. But that's not even the end. Last week, we got a message from someone we didn't expect, Erica. She's alive. Living in a private care facility 2 states away. Under a new name. Heavily medicated for decades, she was considered unfit for release. But after we sent her legal counsel and copies of what we'd found, she started to come out of it. She remembered everything. Ivy talked to her on the phone. It was the first time she'd heard her real mother's voice. Now, we're preparing to go public. This is bigger than just a family dispute. There are forged medical records, abuse cover-ups, potential criminal charges. I've contacted a journalist. I don't care if the world knows. I want justice. And I want to rebuild this house, not just as a home, but as a legacy to the man who tried so hard to save us from the darkness. My parents took me to court, and I took them apart. The day of the court hearing felt like walking into a war zone I didn't sign up for. I wore my grandfather's watch, the old leather-banded one he used to check obsessively every evening at 6 p.m. before lighting his pipe. It didn't even work anymore, but it felt like he was with me. Like he had been all along. Ivy sat in the front row behind me, her hands clasped tightly, trying not to cry. She hadn't spoken to our parents since we revealed the tapes and contacted Erica. They'd tried to call her dozens of times. Left voicemails. Sent emails. All of them laced with guilt, gaslighting, and subtle threats. She didn't reply to a single one. Their lawyer, of course, came in smug. Expensive suit. Fancy briefcase. The kind of guy who smiles at judges but glares at everyone else. My parents walked in behind him. My mother looked tired. Older. My father didn't look at me once. He just stared forward, cold and unreadable. That was his power. Always had been. They had filed a formal contestation of the will, claiming undue influence, mental instability, and suspicious behavior on my grandfather's part. Their argument was, no rational man would leave his estate solely to a grandchild, bypassing his own son. They didn't realize what I had. When my lawyer stood, he didn't say much. Just handed the judge a large envelope and requested it be entered into evidence. Inside were the cassette tapes, digitized. A signed notarized statement from Erica. Bank records showing embezzlement from Grandpa's accounts, dating back 18 years. A private investigator's original report, previously suppressed. A video testimony from Erica, detailing abuse, manipulation, and how she was forcibly institutionalized. The courtroom went silent when the judge pressed play on part of Erica's statement. He took my daughter. He took my life. And my brother made sure I stayed locked away so no one would believe me. My father tried to fight him, but he lost everything. If Elijah sees this, I'm sorry. I didn't leave you. I was taken. My mother buried her face in her hands. My father still didn't look at me. The judge recessed for an hour. When he returned, his face was unreadable. I find the will valid and enforceable. All challenges are dismissed. The estate remains in full possession of Elijah Grant, effective immediately. I exhaled. My knees nearly buckled. But it wasn't over. That night, I got a call from a reporter. The journalist I had contacted, one who specializes in stories about legal injustice and hidden abuse, had fact-checked everything. She was going to publish. And it was going to be big. She wanted quotes. Photos. Even Ivy's consent to include her part of the story. Ivy said yes. We both agreed, no more hiding. The article went live 2 weeks later under the headline. Inheritance Battle Uncovers Generational Abuse, Fraud, and Family Secrets in Quiet Coastal Town. And overnight, everything changed. People who knew my parents, colleagues, church members, former friends, started to come forward. Anonymous tips came in. Apparently, my father had been quietly intimidating people for years. Lawsuits settled. Complaints disappeared. Even Grandpa's old business partner came out of the woodwork to confirm the embezzlement and betrayal. The house became a symbol. Reporters camped outside for days. Neighbors came by with casseroles and awkward condolences. Ivy and I gave a few interviews. Erica remained private, but she spoke to a therapist, for the first time in decades, and is now slowly recovering. And my parents? They tried to disappear. They sold their house. Deleted social media. Moved somewhere south, last I heard. They left behind a trail of angry voicemails and one final letter. It wasn't an apology. Not even close. You think you've won. But you've destroyed your family. You humiliated us. Your grandfather was a bitter, old man who twisted the truth. And you let his poison into your veins. Don't expect forgiveness. I didn't. But here's the part that still haunts me. A week after the article dropped, I was going through Grandpa's old journals. In one of them, dated almost 20 years ago, he wrote something that stayed with me. The truth is like fire. You can smother it, bury it, deny it. But eventually, it burns its way to the surface. And when it does, it either warms the cold or burns down everything you thought was real. My whole life, I'd lived in a version of reality carefully crafted by liars. Now I was standing in the ashes of their lies, free, but scorched. Today, I still live in the house. It's been renovated, but I kept a lot of Grandpa's things. The study, the library, the pipe stand. Ivy visits every weekend. She's reconnecting with Erica slowly, cautiously. It's not perfect. Too many years were stolen. Too many wounds left scars. But for the first time in years, we are honest. With each other. With ourselves. Sometimes I wonder who I'd be if none of this ever came out. And then I realize, I'd still be living under their shadow. A ghost in someone else's narrative. Now, I'm the author. And this story is mine. The last letter. It had been 3 quiet months. The media storm faded. The house felt peaceful again. Ivy started therapy. Erica moved into a small assisted living home closer to us. She and Ivy still hadn't hugged, not yet, but they had begun writing each other. Real letters, handwritten, like the ones Grandpa used to send. I thought that chapter was closed. Then, last week, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Just my name, printed in shaky handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside, a sealed envelope. And a photograph. The photo showed a much younger version of my dad, probably in his 20s, standing beside Grandpa outside the house, smiling. Really smiling. Not the cold, fake version I grew up with. They looked like father and son. Real family. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened the letter. Elijah. I don't expect you to ever forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve to write this. But I need you to know that I've been reading everything. Watching. And remembering things I buried so deep I convinced myself they never happened. Your grandfather was right about me. I hated him for it. He saw the worst in me. And the best. And I destroyed both. You are not me. That's the only comfort I have left. I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know, I'm sorry. Not because I got caught. But because I finally see the damage I did. And you still stood up. Take care of the house. Take care of Ivy. And please, don't become a man like me. No signature. Just the letter. I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. But I did feel something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just, the quiet sense that maybe the story was finally done. That night, I lit one of Grandpa's old pipes and sat on the porch, watching the sun set across the yard where Ivy and I used to run barefoot as kids. The past hadn't disappeared. But it no longer owned me.